Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Now this is a part 2 of the workshop build up. So if you haven't seen part 1, I want you to click the link below and watch that first, because that is essentially doing this side of the workshop. So in this episode, we're going to be concentrating on this side of the workshop.
Sam from Built Not Bought.
Now you can probably see behind me a half-finished office. So in the first episode, I went through actually putting up the walls and getting already plastered, gyprocked, ready to go. Now in this episode, what we're first going to be focusing on is finishing off that office. So I was painting the ceilings earlier today, so now I'm going to get onto painting the walls, doing all the skirtings, doors, and the exterior as well. So once that's sorted, we can finally move all the office stuff back inside there and give us some room out here. Then we've got some very special deliveries coming, hopefully today or tomorrow, that I'm super excited about. So stay tuned for that. Right, now with the flooring for the office, I didn't want to go carpet because I wanted to be able to roll around on the thing on my wheelie chair there. And I also didn't want to keep it the concrete because that just looks ugly. So I decided to go with this flooring. Now it's a thick vinyl flooring. Now normally you've got to glue this stuff down, but because it's so small, I can actually get away with just cutting it perfectly and kind of slotting it in, it will lock in place. Now I'm doing that because this is a leased property, so if I do get kicked out in a couple of years' time, it's easy to pull the stuff up, but whether it's glued down, that becomes a problem. So I'm gonna get this matting put in there. Doesn't need too much of it. It's gonna look pretty smicko. It's like a nice wood flooring, and it'll finish off that office just nicely. I've already laid a bit here just to try it out, but it's pretty damn good stuff. It's called Loose Lay. I had a guy off Instagram message me. He's got a flooring business, had some of this stuff left over from a job, so it was only just enough to do this area, and it was essentially something he couldn't really sell to anyone, so bit of luck there, got it cheap, and just laying it down. So the main thing is really just cutting it nice and tight. The biggest thing to remember is to try and lock it in when you get to that last section, and then that'll stop the thing sliding around and lifting up. But it's quite dense and it's quite sort of heavy and thick, so when it is in place, like these ones here, don't really move, so pretty fun as well. It's not too bad. Alright, so another thing that needed attention here was the electrical side. Now I didn't jump to that too early because I wanted to make sure I knew where things were going to end up. So what I've ended up going to do is actually lay out some more electrical. So I've got some GPOs around the workshop. The hoist needs 15 amp. I'm going to chuck a couple of 15 amps here as well for the welding, stuff like that, any machinery, and possibly a 3-phase plug as well. So with a bit of knowledge in this area, I actually put up all the conduit, saddles and cable, ran everything, put all the fixings and accessories together, and then I'll get a Sparky in to just isolate, terminate and tag, test all the gear, and then that's the electrical stuff done. So that was something I worked on the last couple of days.
Here it is. Deliveries, deliveries, deliveries.
Okay, so you guys have known how long I've wanted a hoist, like for a very long time, and it's something that I'm going to be using time and time again. So I did a lot of research of which hoist to go. There's that many on the market. There's some cheap ones, there's some expensive ones. But when I came across this company, Hatpa, they're actually in Brisbane, down on the Gold Coast there. Now, they seem to be the only company that actually do like quality control, testing, changes to designs with these hoists that are made overseas. So this seems to be one of the most safest options since it's something that I'm going to be using every day. But the prices were also pretty bloody on the money as well. So I decided to go this one. It's the Hatpa 30. Now this is a 2-poster hoist. I didn't want a 4-poster hoister. I didn't want a 4-poster hoist just because I don't have the bloody room for it, let's be honest. Now the 2-poster is really good. This is the 4-ton version, so it can handle the weight of a 4-wheel drive. I can get my patrol up there, and pretty much anything else that I can throw at the thing is going to handle it. Now, these are a really good option for the DIY in their home garage, but they also are quite popular in those sort of industrial day-to-day mechanical workshops, because they do come with a, I think it's a WHS kit, so it's like a full-on certification, tested, tag, Australian approved stamp, so you can pay that little extra to get that approval on your hoist as well, which I've got on this one. So I'm pretty much going to get around unwrapped. It's going to be installing it myself. We just need a few dynabolts, some electrical work, and a few muscles from the boys to help stand these columns up. So that's what we're going to get into this weekend, get the thing up, and I'm super excited to get that first car on there. But stay tuned as well, because there's a bit of work to be done around balancing up. So the whole idea with a hoist, a lot of them don't get installed properly, and they actually, when they go up and down, they kind of go one before the other, but there's a real trick to actually getting them balanced so they can go up evenly and then down evenly as well. So I'll take you guys through that, and then hopefully this thing will be sitting mint. All right, so after a couple of days of buggering around trying to get these things stood up, they're finally in place, ready to go now. I've done a few little checks that you need to do, reading the instructions, just checking that everything's lubed up where it needs to be, that the chains aren't crossed up as well. You also just need to check for any burrs or weld splatters that are over the nylon block clicker holder thingy bobs. So I've done all that. Now they're sanded up, ready to go. So the next thing to do is put the floor plate down, lay that down, because that pretty much determines the separation and the spread of the columns where they need to be. And then we go ahead and start mounting the slave column, which is this one here on my left or your right. And that is the one that doesn't have the pump and control box on it. So that's the first one gets mounted. I'm going to throw a couple of dynabolts in there just to anchor it, and then we can look at setting up the rest of it from there. Alright, now we've got one column mounted, drilled all the dynabolts in, hammered them in, and just nipped them up for now. Look, it's an absolute horrible, dirty job to do, so I had a face mask on. There'll be dust and shit that goes everywhere, so just keep that in mind when you're doing it. Try and keep the thing clean. Now that this first one's in place, we can start lining up the second one, and I'm going to start running through all the cables and hydraulic lines that link the two up. That's the next thing to do. I'm just going to lift these arms up a little bit with the jack and make sure that the rams, those columns, are actually sitting in. There's like a pin on the base plate of the columns that the ram sits inside, so we'll just check that that's correct, and then we can start looking at pulling through all these cables, balancing cables and hydraulic lines as well. Alright, we've stood up the second beam now, and I've mounted that with the dynabolts and nipped them up. Now I'm going to do one more pull tomorrow. You pretty much essentially do them as tight as you can possibly do them. And you know, I'm worn out of my muscles today, so I'm going to try again tomorrow. So the next thing I'm going to do is start hooking up the hydraulic lines. So there's two lines supplied. One goes from this motor, so I've installed this motor on the other column. So you've got your slave, and then this is the master column, which has the pump on it. So I've just hooked that on there, nipped it up. Now we're going to run a hose between the pump down to the cylinder, and then on the other side of the cylinder there'll be another hose that runs through that grate in between the beams, and then it runs over to the other column, and that'll hook up all the hydraulic lines, and then it's just a case of filling it up. We've also got to add the limit switch. So the limit switch goes on this column here, which essentially means that when the hoist goes all the way to the top, it'll hit that limit and then cut the motor out so you don't go too far and push through the end. And it's also handy if you do have a low roof as well. That can sort of be a lower point than what the hoist can go, so you can actually set that as well so you don't have to go and crush your roof on your car. So that's what I'm going to get up to next, and then we'll be pretty close to hooking this thing up. Alright, so progress on here today. We've got Sammy here, Sparky. We're going to do some more wiring, getting these outlets in. So I'm going to run 2 10s, so I've got a 15 amp on each circuit for the welders and anything I need to run on there, and then a couple of 10s as well. And obviously there's one in the corner there, there's one over there, and then I've got 2 over in the bench there for chargers and whatnot. And also there's another circuit being run for the hoist, because that's a 15 amp, so running another circuit across on that catenary wire there, down the beam to feed the hoist because that's a 15 amp single phase plug. Okay, so I ended up getting a bunch of stuff from Hap for this workshop, which I'll take you through when we do a full workshop tour once the whole place is finished. But something else that I actually need to put together, not only the hoist, is this shop press. So I ended up getting a 20-ton shop press because I use that a lot in my old shed. So no different here, I'll be putting in different bearings, bits and pieces when I do my trunnion bushes, suspension bushes, stuff like that. It's really handy. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I might just run a time lapse of putting this together and then we'll see how it looks in here. I think this is a perfect spot. I'm hoping it's big enough. All right, check it out, there we have it. We've got a hoist that is operational. So now that the electrical's done and we know the hoist works, the next thing to do is sort the balancing cables. Now, this is a little bit tedious, but it's a very important step. So essentially on each carriage in the columns, there's a pull down and a pull up. So if one's in front of the other on the way up, it'll pull the other one to match it, and same coming down, it'll pull anyone that's lagging behind. And that's super important to avoid your car going down on an angle or going up on an angle, and also having those clickers click at the same time, because if you listen now, they're separate. So we want to get that clicking the same. So that's the next challenge. Try and get that as close as I can while it's here, and then we need to put a car on and just continue readjusting it until it's perfect. All right, I think we're pretty much there now with balancing up the cable. So one way to tell if you've done it correctly, like I said before, when you raise the hoist up, they click together. It's almost like it's one click, which we've pretty much got bang on. Check it out. So you hear that? You hear only one click. There's actually both going. So that's perfectly balanced right now. So I'm pretty happy with that. Thanks to the old X-Trail for whacking that on there. Start with a lighter car. So now the next thing I want to do is just tension all those dynabolts again and make sure that all the posts are in properly. Make sure everything's re-greased, check all the fittings for leaks and stuff like that. And that is pretty much the install of the hoist there. So also while I'm here now, the Hatpa Hoist, the reason I went for them, they're a local company, so it's a family-owned business. Gavin and Marie, a really nice couple, I went down to have a chat with them because he seems to know so much about these hoists. They're just down the Gold Coast there. And he's done a lot of groundwork with these, getting different approvals sorted. They meet the Australian standard. There's all sorts of documentation so they can use for industry and for your garage at home. So definitely check them out, hap.com.au, give Gavin a call. They also have so many different types as well, not just these 2 posters, they do 4 posters, they do scissor lifts, jacks. In fact, I got a bunch of stuff off them as well. So I've got the hose reel for my air compressor, also got a transmission jack, a trolley jack, a couple of little trolleys to kick around on. I've got a press, a shop press, even a rotisserie for a build coming up. They do all sorts of stuff, not just hoist, so definitely go check them out. But I think now we're going to get to painting this side of the workshop. Now with that office, I've got something special. Now we've done the logo on this side, but I've got a cool idea of what I'm going to do for this wall as well. All right, you know what guys, I think we're pretty much 99% of the way there with getting this workshop finished. So I think I'm going to wrap up the episode there. I'm going to do a separate video for a full walkthrough, full tour of everything once I've spent a week or 2 in here and worked out where everything's going to end up. So you guys can see the completed workshop for the Built on Board HQ. There'll be so many videos done in here, a couple of big builds this year. I've got heaps of exciting stuff in between. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, check out our website for the latest merchandise, and I'll see you in the next Built on Board episode. Cheers. Hello guys and welcome to Built Not Bought HQ. Make sure to click on the far left to subscribe to the channel. Click down below to see the latest episode if you missed it. And don't forget our merchandise on our website. See you in the next episode.